Alright, what's going on everybody? Today I'm going to show you how to make an EDM style beat in FL Studio using pretty much only stock sounds or free plugins. I'm going to start off just by playing this beat for you. It's relatively basic, but it gets the job done. So that's the basic gist of our track, and I'm just going to show you a few of the different sections that we have here, how I made the sounds. Most of these started off with just a normal sine wave or saw wave out of a synthesizer. So in the very beginning, just to give some interest to the beat, we start off with just a wave drop. You can find many of these for free out there by downloading some sample packs, or use some of the ones in FL. So we've got just that small little sound there. On top of that, I used a basic synth here that I made with Attollo Noisemaker. Really good plugin, free, nice synthesizer. Has a whole lot of built-in presets. I probably found one of those and then tweaked it a bit. By itself, that's not very interesting. So, to add to it, I gave it an arpeggio. Well, I called it an arpeggio. It's really just a couple of notes I put together. For this one, I used Groove Machine Synth, GMS. This is free with FL Studio. I started off with a basic sine wave, and up here you can see you choose your wave shape. And then by messing around with the different filters, envelopes, LFOs, and some of the oscillators, I ended up with kind of a cool sounding synthesizer. To give it a build, we use an automation clip and a filter, which I assigned to its mixer track. We can see we're on mixer track 36. We use the Fruity Love filter, and then the Acon Digital Multiply, which is a free chorus style effect. Altogether, it sounds like this. So when we layer that with our synth and our little wave drop in the beginning, we get a pretty good intro. Now we want to make it a bit more exciting, catch the listener's ear. So I used let's see, this FX Splatter, I called it. This also came out of Attollo Noisemaker. This is one of their FX that they had, which I tweaked a little bit. And I used some target controls in order to change the channel panning. You can see right here. And that gives it a neat spacey effect on either side. And then in our mixer, I routed that over to my convolution reverb to give it that big echoey effect. And then to finish it off, to give it a little bit something else, I made a lead synth out of mini synth, also free with FL Studio. And I just used a basic saw wave, changed up the modifiers, gave it a little bit of an oscillation effect, and a couple other things just to give it a tiny bit of movement so it's not too boring. The whole thing together for the intro. Not too bad. So then leading on into our, I suppose you could call it the first verse, the next part of the song, we needed to have a nice build to hype up our listeners. My second synth is copied notes from our first synth that we made, but I made it in Harmless, which also comes free with FL Studio. This synth sounds much larger. We have our first synth. And then we build upon it with a larger synth number 2. So to lead into that, I used that synth to create this rise right here. And that is just a few chords with another target control on the channel volume, which we just see rising upwards there. To emphasize the introduction there, we have 2 more wave hits. One for the top end, one for the bottom. And then we let our synth play. So we're going to start at the build here. You can really use any chord progression that you'd like as long as it sounds good. Put those little splatter effects back in. Now, so that the listener doesn't get bored, we now added a bass synth, which I got from Citrus. Tweaked a couple of the parameters, but the one that they had in there was actually pretty good by itself. And then with our synth, so for the 4th repetition of that first section of our song, rather than just keeping the same pulsing synth, I just held the chords, looped our little lead back in over here, and then used a rising filter that gives it that swell effect. Underneath I gave it an extra rise for special effect. Sounds a little different. And that whole thing creates a nice build into our drum section. For drums, I just used stock drums, programmed them in each on their own channel. And then I used a few mixing tricks to make them feel like they're breathing. This particular kick drum sounds rather squashed, and I did that on purpose. With some very extreme settings on this T-Rex Black 76 limiting amplifier, it really squishes out many of the dynamics, but it allows it to cut through the mix so that you can then take an EQ to it and select which frequencies you want to accentuate and which ones you want to remove, so that when you play it along with the bass line, they don't conflict too badly. And I'll let you hear those 2 parts together. You'll notice that the frequencies aren't stepping on each other too badly. Everything is pretty clear. So our second part of the song proceeds along just like the first time, only now we have the drum track playing below it. You'll notice in these drums I used a very high-pitched hi-hat. I did that so that it would stay out of the way of the synthesizer to keep a nice crispy top end. And then I took that arpeggiated style synth, layered that with the bass to help us with our build. We remove some of the hi-hats. You just have your kick and your snare. And then everything builds together into our chorus section, we'll say. For this, I have our full lead section, which we already heard and saw that particular synthesizer, which was Mini-Synth. I then used another copy of Mini-Synth, but with a different sound. So when you hear them together, it gives a nice layering effect. You hear a little bit of phasey movement in there, which is going to sound real nice in the whole mix. So if we layer everything up here and we listen to it one piece at a time, we have our lead on top, with our synth right below it. Bass fills in the bottom end. And then your drums to give it that nice groove. And then we have our build. Just pretty much just a copy-paste of the same build we've used throughout the song. And that's the real basics. Some of the things I did for mixing. In order to keep our snare away from our synthesizers, I used an equalizer, pulled out some of the high mids and high end parts. That allowed our synth to fill in the middle. Make sure we always take out some low end there. We don't want our snare drum to conflict with our kick drum. Put it all together. Put on a quick mastering chain that I made so it sounds real nice. And let's give this a listen. Introduction into making an EDM song in FL Studio. All free sounds, you can pick them up on the internet. Many of them come in FL Studio. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If there's anything that you'd like me to do a video about in the future, if you have any questions or comments, please let me know.